Welcome back to the Bible Study Journey. Today we're diving into Genesis chapter 10, a chapter that many people skip over, but it's actually one of the most important in the entire Bible. This chapter is known as the Table of Nations. It's the original Ancestry.com, showing how the entire world was repopulated after the flood through the three sons of Noah. It connects the ancient world, the modern world, and God's long-term plan for humanity in a way that is just mind-blowing. So, let's break it down in a simple, powerful, and easy-to-understand way. Genesis 10 begins with the families of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. After the flood, these three men and their wives became the roots of every single nation on earth. Their descendants spread out across the globe, forming people groups, tribes, kingdoms, and cultures that we can still trace today. Each son's lineage played a completely different role in shaping world history. And understanding this is key to understanding the rest of the Bible. First up, we have the descendants of Japheth. The Bible lists his sons Gomer, Magog Madai, Javan Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. From these sons, a pattern emerges. Japheth's family moved outward toward the coastlands and what the Bible calls the Isles of the Gentiles. They eventually settled across Europe and parts of Asia. Some of these names might even sound familiar. Javan is connected to Greece, Madai to the Medes, and Gomer to early European peoples. These groups would go on to build and influence what we now know as Western civilization. Essentially, Japheth's descendants formed many of the far-off nations. Next, we come to Ham, whose descendants formed some of the world's earliest and most powerful kingdoms. His sons were Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. Now, these lineages are extremely important in the biblical narrative, so let's look a little closer. From Cush comes one of the most fascinating figures in Genesis, Nimrod. The Bible calls him a mighty hunter before the Lord. Nimrod was a kingdom builder. He established major ancient cities like Babel, Nineveh, and Calah. These cities became incredible centers of power and innovation, but they also became places where people began to organize and build their own empires, often in rebellion against God. Nimrod's story shows us how humanity began building kingdoms for its own glory, without acknowledging God as their king. Then there's Mizraim. This name is the Hebrew word for Egypt. So from this line came the Egyptians, one of the greatest civilizations in history. We also see the Philistines originating from this line. Both of these nations would later play huge roles in the story of Israel, sometimes as allies, but often as adversaries. And finally, we have Canaan. This name is especially significant because this family settled in the very land that God would later promise to Abraham and his descendants. Canaan's descendants formed the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Hivites, the Sidonians, and many other tribes that occupied the Promised Land. These are the nations we read about throughout the Old Testament, interacting with Israel for centuries. Last, but certainly not least, we come to the lineage of Shem, which is really the spiritual heart of Genesis 10. Shem is the ancestor of the Semitic peoples. From Shem's line, we get the Hebrews, the Israelites, the line of Abraham, and ultimately, Jesus Christ himself. When we trace the names in Shem's family tree, we see a direct line leading straight to Abraham in the very next chapter. Shem's genealogy is a powerful reminder that even in the generations right after the flood, God's promise of salvation and redemption for the world was already in motion. So, why does all of this matter? At first glance, Genesis 10 can look like a long, dry list of names. But when you look closer, you see something incredible. This chapter shows us the origins of nations, the roots of world civilizations, and the direct pathway to Abraham, which sets the stage for God's entire plan of redemption. It reveals that God was sovereignly guiding history, even as humanity was spreading out, forming cities, and building empires. Genesis 10 isn't just a genealogy, it's a roadmap of how the world began again after the flood, and how God faithfully kept his promise to Noah. Thank you for joining today's study of Genesis chapter 10. The Table of Nations. If this helped you understand the Bible in a deeper way, don't forget to like this video, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the Bible Study Journey for more chapter-by-chapter teachings. Next up, We're tackling Genesis chapter 11 and the famous Tower of Babel. I'll see you in the next study. God bless you.